Hello everyone, welcome to the best bands of patch 6.5. If you just want to skip straight to your tier instead of looking at these caveats, just click on the annotations above. So, for those caveats, note that this is not a tier list. We are not evaluating champions' power here. Instead, what we're looking at is what bestbands.com, what we calculate as influence, which is basically a champion's consistency. A champion's consistency is not the same thing as their power. Consistency is just a measurement of their win rate, pick rate, and ban rate altogether, to determine how often you will lose against a champion compared to how often you will win against them. Note that powerful champions may still have very low consistency. Consider, for example, Fiora, who, while considered very strong, only has about a 50% win rate in just about every tier, meaning when you fight them, you will win against them about as often as you will lose. Meanwhile, as you can see from these other champions, while they often don't seem to be necessarily powerful, like Lux for example, they have this trend of being very consistent at what they do. So, let's take a look at each of these individually. I'll hold them onto the screen for about 10 seconds apiece. You can just pause if you want to take a look at them more in depth. Udyr, Master Yi, Lux, Shyvana, Malphite, Blitz, Soraka, Volley, Garen, Amumu, Graves, and Janna for silver. For gold, Udyr, followed by Yi, and Janna, Lux as the top 4, with the honorary mentions going to Shyvana, Blitzcrank, Nautilus, Soraka, Malphite, Jhin, Graves, and Volibear. In Platinum and the top 4 we have Janna, Udyr, Shyvana, and Zed. Honorary mentions going out to Master Yi, Lux, Blitzcrank, Pantheon, Jhin, Ahri, Graves, and Nautilus. And finally in Diamond, we have Janna, Zed, Nautilus, and Nidalee as the top 4 priority bans, followed by Shyvana, Jhin, Udyr, Lux, Blitzcrank, Pantheon, Ahri, and Caitlyn. So let's look at some observations about these. First, one of the biggest things you'll note is that Udyr is everywhere at the top spots. Right there, first in gold, first in silver, first in bronze. Despite the nerfs to Wyrmgrave and Swiftness, and even with the nerf to the Rift Herald stacks given to Devourer, Udyr is like super consistent in just about every tier, and I think it's going to take a little bit more than that in order to take this Beastmaster down. Second, you'll notice that Shyvana appears in multiple spots. We have Shyvana down here in number 9, we have Shyvana appearing here in number 4, over here in number 5, 3, and 5. Shyvana has been rising in power recently, even again with the Devourer nerf to the Rift Herald stacks. You would think that it would have impacted Shyvana a little bit more, but their consistency in just about every tier is probably part of the reason why nerfs are currently on the PvE for Shyvana. Despite like a lot of people's speculation that perhaps they don't deserve it, it seems that their consistency begs to differ. Second, we should also take a look at who isn't on this list, namely Kog'Maw. Please stop banning Kog'Maw. I'm trying to play AP. Well, probably because the nerfs to Kog'Maw, even in the previous patch, actually were enough to knock them down for the consistency charts. And the further nerfs that they received this time in 6.5 even further solidified that. Note, however, that Kog'Maw's win rate has been bugged because they were disabled for a few days. So we aren't going to know exactly the full extent of their consistency, but we can consider that in patch 6.4 they already weren't among the top 12 anymore. And by patch 6.5 where they receive further nerfs, we can definitely expect them to no longer be the priority ban that they used to be. A notable thing that people sometimes get surprised about is that Janna appears, like starting from down in silver, they rise up into gold, up to platinum and diamond is the most consistent ban in the game. And that strikes people as very unintuitive because they're a utility support. How could that be? Note that they have a 54.5% win rate with a 30% pick rate here, increasing almost to 56% in diamond. And a 40% pick rate too. Like, that makes them both the highest win rate champion in the game in diamond, while also the highest pick rate champion in the game in diamond as well. Like, they are monstrously consistent. And people, I think, just don't know how to appreciate the sheer amount of power that Janna is able to provide. Riot Jules, about a few months ago actually, once stated that one way that people misuse their bans is they would be ban LeBlanc, who, outside of like the top 1% of the game, was a terrible banning choice because their win rate was like only 47%. They were just really frustrating to play against. where a champion like Janna, one of the statistically best champions in the game, was banned less than 1% of the time. And I think history is repeating itself here. I think people are starting to slowly catch on to Janna's power and her consistency, but I think it will take a little while before it like becomes popular conception. Next, Master Yi. I've been noticing people's frustration in Master Yi recently, and it seems it's partially warranted. In Silver and Gold, at least, they have both fairly high win rates, with pretty good pick rates as well. Although, as you go into the other tiers such as Platinum and Diamond, you won't see them quite as much over there. So it's important to note that this is also in conjunction with the Rift Herald stacks, and is probably part of the reason why they're receiving such significant nerfs on the PvE, especially to I think they're changing it so that way they no longer scale with total attack damage and only from bonus attack damage, which means the tanky build that is starting to become popular isn't just going to be dominating as hard as recently. Next we can go to Lux. Lux is actually appearing in the top 12 for a while, like they're pretty much always there, similar to Shyvana, although I don't believe they have any nerfs on the PvE waiting them comparison. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say, like this has been true of Lux for the several last patches. They've just been sitting here, rising, sitting all the time, as just like a really consistent pick. People don't seem to be finding Lux as frustrating as some of the other champions, and part of that may be because they associate all the necessary skill shots with them as like too difficult for most people to handle. Although it seems their consistency disagrees, because despite having a really high pick rate, their win rate seems to be fairly reasonable as well. One of the more interesting things, Jhin. I think people are beginning to understand just the sheer amount of influence that Jhin's able to exert on the game, especially considering that their pick rate in Diamond is 30%. People already are jumping onto that Jhin train. The lower elos, as usual, are a little slow to catch on by comparison. I can expect that their pick rate is going to be rising up higher, and this is just my speculation, but given how flashy Jhin is, how much damage they seem to do, that they're going to be a high priority ban soon. I think that we're already reaching that point. I've been seeing Jhin getting banned around in a couple of my Diamond games. I think they'll start slowly trickling down as we enter the next patch, because I don't believe there will be any nerfs with them. And once we see some nerfs to like Shyvana and Master Yi, for example, Jhin's consistency is just going to keep rising higher and higher, and people are just going to catch on. And finally, there's a cute boiling here. Hey Mouse, what's up?